Chinese civilization is one of the oldest in world history. It is over 5,000 years old. And throughout all this time, the vast celestial empire with its millions of inhabitants was ruled by powerful emperors, sons of heaven, who were not only the embodiment of supreme secular power for their subjects, but also the link between the earthly world and the world of the gods. Any word of the emperor had the force of law for his subjects. The profound reverence for the monarch in China is evidenced by the fact that after the 1911 revolution, the last emperor of the Celestial Empire faced no reprisals and even retained his title, as well as the right to reside in a luxurious residence. Compare this with the fate of the last Russian autocrat and his family. Well, in this episode we'll talk about how Chinese emperors lived, what their duties were, and how they entertained themselves. In addition, you will learn about the Forbidden City, the Imperial Harem and its inhabitants, as well as the menu and wardrobe of Chinese rulers. My name is Semyon, and I hereby open the How They Lived series. Let's begin. The sacredness of imperial power. For a long time, there was no unified state religion in China. There was no centralized church or a special caste of professional priests, as there was, for example, in Europe or the Middle East. The belief system of the ancient Chinese was archaic. Central to it was the cult of heaven, which, among other things, was considered the source of legitimacy for the supreme state authority. The emperor held the official title of Son of Heaven and, in a way, embodied the divine order on earth. It was believed that it was the ruler who maintained the balance between the earth, heaven, and people. Only the emperor, as the high priest, had the right to offer sacrifices to the earth and heaven. It was believed that this ritual ensured the prosperity of the Chinese people. In addition, by regularly offering sacrifices in the ancestral temple, the emperor served as an example of filial piety, one of the main virtues in traditional Chinese philosophy. The ruler of the Celestial Empire was also associated by his subjects with the golden dragon, a symbol of power, honor, and nobility. The Chinese have always had a special attitude toward this creature. They believed and still believe that dragons control all the elements. Therefore, the emperor, being a dragon in a sense, united all existence into one. The rulers of ancient China themselves were often called dragons, thus emphasizing their sacred status. Since ancient times, legends about the divine origin of emperors have come down to us, for example, about their birth as a result of immaculate conception. It is clear that with such origins, rulers in ancient China were not considered ordinary people, and they were treated accordingly. Even the emperor's name was considered sacred. It was forbidden to pronounce it, and special characters were used for writing it. An ordinary Chinese person had no chance of even seeing their emperor. He lived in a guarded palace where entry was forbidden to common people. Only a few courtiers were allowed to see the ruler. The emperor of ancient China was not the first among equals, as was the case with medieval European monarchs. He was the living embodiment of a deity on earth, the bearer of exceptional power granted to him from above. All legislative power was concentrated in the hands of the emperor. He decided foreign policy matters, commanded armies, and appointed officials to the highest positions. His word alone was enough to suspend any law or to execute any of his subjects. It only remains to add that neither the sacred status of the Son of Heaven nor life itself. In the enclosed palace, emperors were not protected from assassinations and conspiracies. Many of them died at a very young age, and their deaths were far from natural. The most interesting thing is that Chinese philosophy even found an explanation for this. As long as the ruler possesses virtue, heaven favors him and sends all kinds of good omens. But when his virtue wavers, the monarch begins to have problems: crop failures, epidemics, invasions by enemies, or popular unrest. If he continues to behave inappropriately, he is overthrown by some rebels or conspirators. The Forbidden City. I already mentioned that the Chinese emperor lived in a secluded palace where outsiders were forbidden to enter, but honestly, it's hard to even call it just a palace. It's an entire city covering 720,000 square meters consisting of 980 buildings and structures. It's called the Forbidden City, and today it's the largest palace complex in the world. It's located in the center of Beijing, and millions of tourists visit it every year. It was built from 1406 to 1420, and after that, it served as the residence for 24 emperors from both the Ming and Qing dynasties. Emperor Zodi began construction of the complex. According to legend, the design of the future palace appeared in a dream to one of the Buddhist monks who shared his vision with the future emperor. The Forbidden City wasn't built just anywhere. The best Chinese astronomers specifically calculated the location to be directly at the center of the earth. It is clear that the interior decoration of the palace amazed everyone with its luxury. The most expensive and exclusive materials were used for the construction of the complex, the finest types of wood, marble, precious metals, and stones. The palace used technologies that were unprecedented for its time. For example, the palace complex was heated by a sophisticated system of underground pipes, and hot air was supplied to every room. Something similar appeared in Europe only in the 19th century. More than 1 million workers were involved in the construction. You could say that the construction of the Imperial Palace became the largest project in the Celestial Empire since the building of the Great Wall of China. The palace is surrounded by a moat and a 10-meter-high wall stretching 3.4 kilometers, and it was considered sacred.
Местом простым людям вход в него был
Forbidden. Violators faced a slow and painful death. How did Chinese emperors live? A day in the life of the Son of Heaven? The Chinese emperor was an extremely busy man. His life was scheduled almost down to the minute. The workday of the ruler of China began even before sunrise, around 5 a.m. He was dressed, and the emperor's outfit depended on the month and the season. After that came a prayer to Buddha. And then the ruler would spend several hours studying historical records, because it was believed that to govern better, he needed to study a lot and become familiar with the experience of his predecessors. At 7 a.m., breakfast followed. After that, the emperor held an audience and then went to his quarters, where he worked with documents. If there were many of them, the emperor might stay up until late at night, reviewing reports and documents. The ruler had a special pen with specific ink, which he used to make notes and comments on documents. If there was a lot of work, after lunch the emperor could spend time reading or engaging in other cultural activities. Many Chinese rulers wrote decent poetry, had a talent for calligraphy, painted or enjoyed opera singing. In addition, emperors took part in numerous religious ceremonies and rituals, and many sons of heaven were truly devout people. Another prayer was held that evening,
после которой император отправлялся почивать.
He usually went to bed early, around 9 p.m., so that he could wake up before dawn the next day. What did the emperors of China wear? Only the emperor had the right to wear clothes decorated with dragons. It was called longpao, a robe or dress with dragons. The creation of the imperial costume in China was taken extremely seriously. An entire government department was responsible for this matter, and sometimes the process of making the longpao took more than 2 years. Artists created a sketch of the proposed costume, which was then submitted to the ruler for approval. If it was approved, it was sent to one of the tailoring workshops in Nanjing, Suzhou or Hangzhou to make the longpao. Everything was important. The cut, the style, the color, the embroidery, every element of the emperor's attire symbolized something. Traditionally, yellow was the dominant color in the costume, as it was considered the color of imperial authority, the clothing of the ruler. Here there were no restrictions at all, and each such outfit often cost a fortune. And this was despite the fact that the emperor could change his outfit up to 28 times a day. How did Chinese emperors eat? The rulers of the last Chinese dynasty, Qing, had 2 main meals a day, early in the morning and right afternoon. Although, of course, the ruler could request a light snack or some drink at any time and in any place. Moreover, there was no special dining hall in the Forbidden City. Food was usually eaten wherever the emperor wished. Interestingly, no one was allowed to dine together with the Son of Heaven, not even the Empress. She ate separately. Naturally, the emperor's dishes were the most expensive and exquisite, and they tried to change the menu every day. The Russian complex had a main kitchen where the main dishes were prepared, its own bakery that made bread and sweets, and a tea house responsible for tea and other drinks. And the emperor's meals, as well as those of his courtiers, were taken care of by two departments at once: the Imperial Court Office and the Palace Affairs Department. The emperor's lunch consisted of dozens, and sometimes even hundreds, of different dishes. The table at which the emperor ate was two-tiered, and the dishes on the upper tier could always be replaced with others. At the emperor's request, the leftovers from the meal were given to the courtiers. A strip of silver was placed in each plate or bowl to check whether there was any poison in the food or drink. For the same reason, before serving each dish to the emperor, the eunuchs would taste it first. A huge amount of money was spent on the imperial kitchen every year, with 30,000 liters of chicken, duck, fish, pork, and vegetables being used. Water for the Forbidden City was brought from the purest mountain springs, and a special variety of rice was grown on dedicated farms. It should be added that lavish banquets were regularly held in the Forbidden City. They were held on Lunar New Year, on the birthdays of the Emperor and Empress, imperial concubines, and at the weddings of imperial sons and princes, as well as on many other festive occasions. The Imperial Harem. The Chinese took the ruler's personal life extremely seriously, because for the country and for the ruler himself, it was important to have a male heir. Every night, special officials recorded not only whom the Son of Heaven was with, but also the number of sexual acts and their duration. As befitted such a serious ruler, the Chinese emperor had at his disposal a huge harem consisting of 1,000 wives and concubines. There was a strict hierarchy among the women, with the empress at the top, followed by the emperor's senior wives and his favorite concubines. The latter often achieved high status at court and even competed with the empress to have their children claim the throne. However, traditionally, it was the empress's firstborn who was considered the main heir to the throne. The life of the harem was managed as usual by eunuchs, and often there were up to 10,000 concubines in the harems of Chinese emperors. In other words, if the ruler called a new girl to him every night, it would take him 25 years to meet each one. The emperor's advisors created a special calendar so that the Son of Heaven could honor as many ladies as possible with his attention. But sadly, that didn't help much. Most of the girls in the harem never met the emperor in person in their entire lives, even though not just anyone was accepted into the harem. They searched for beauties to please the emperor, all across the country. There was a strict selection system consisting of several stages, and the initial selection was carried out by palace eunuchs. Anyone who was too tall, short, thin, or fat was immediately rejected. The remaining candidates had their ears, eyes, nose, hair, and skin examined. Anyone who had even the slightest flaw was rejected. Reasons for rejection could include feet or hands that were too large, a hoarse voice, or problems with their walk. The final selection was usually conducted personally by the emperor, his mother, the Empress Dowager. On average, out of 6,000 applicants, only 100 or 200 girls became the chosen ones of the Son of Heaven. The concubines lived within the Forbidden City, isolated from the outside world. They took care of daily household chores, followed the instructions of the empress or the ruler's wives, and served the emperor. By the way, concubines were not allowed to raise their children. They couldn't even live with them in the same place. With so many wives and concubines, the question of the emperor's virility naturally arose, especially since many emperors were no longer young men. There were many methods for this. For example, rulers would sleep in the arms of young virgins, as it was believed that their fresh breath would grant virility and youth. The best suited were girls between 15 and 18 years old. Emperors were strictly forbidden from having sex with women over 30 years old, as it was believed they were already too old for a ruler. There were also more exotic methods, such as a drink made from the menstrual blood of female paratroopers, various alchemical elixirs, tinctures from ginseng root, and rhinoceros horns. To maintain an erection, special bands were used to tie the jade stem. The emperor's diet was also chosen with consideration for his hyperactive sex life. The menu included oriental arborvitae berries, dairy products, poultry meat, and sparrow eggs. Most importantly, the emperor was forbidden to ejaculate. The Taoists believed that for every 10 female orgasms, there should be no more than 23 male ones. Supposedly, this way the man's bright energy, yang, is preserved. A few words in conclusion. In 1911, a revolution began in China, and already in February 1912, the last Chinese emperor, Puyi, abdicated the throne. Thus ended the millennia-old history of the Sons of Heaven, exotic, mysterious, and in many ways incomprehensible to Europeans. The Chinese treated their deposed emperor gently. They even let him keep his title. The famous Forbidden City was also preserved. Under Mao Zedong, they wanted to level it to the ground, but fortunately, that did not happen. Now the palace of the Chinese emperors is the main attraction not only of Beijing, but of all of China. In 2023, it was visited by more than 10 million tourists. Well, that's all from me. See you in the next video.